SEED Act. So in 2022, Senate Bill 9 was passed, which provided a different approach to literacy in the state of Kentucky. So I do want you to open up your chat right now, please, and tell me anything and everything that you know. What's happening? Am I not sharing my screen? And I thought I was. So Terry, you're helping me? Okay, thanks. I'm a dork. Okay, open up your chat and tell me anything and everything that you know about Senate Bill 9. Maybe its requirements, its timeliness. I'm going to give you about 35 seconds to do that for me. What do you know about Senate Bill 9? All right, let's click through, Tara. Thank you guys for engaging this afternoon. All right, so Senate Bill 9 called for comprehensive actions to improve. So the first step was, hey, we're going to have state professional learning support strategies. One of those main strategies, guys, is our Kentucky Reading Academies that we are providing to anyone and everyone at the elementary level who want to go through letters, which is how we teach students to read, how students learn to read, and letters for administrators. That's just one of the things that we are doing to support professional learning around literacy. We know that we've got to intervene early. And so that's where a lot of you have put in the chat, like, hey, we got to make sure we're doing interventions, that we are utilizing screeners and diagnostics. Everybody who has students who are not meeting benchmark, we've talked extensively for the past year and a half about developing the reading improvement plan. If you weren't at Christy Biggerstaff and Ashley Hill's session earlier today, I'd encourage you to go back to that to hear more about the reading improvement plan. And then the Read at Home guide is something that Whitney Hamilton went through. So if you were unable to see those sessions, I would encourage you to do that. That Read at Home plan engages families and the community in the need, right? That this is a community need that we've got to together improve literacy outcomes for our students. That's really what that piece is saying. And then the last piece was teacher certification. On December 13th, guys, EPSB passed the requirement that teachers going into elementary education now have to pass a praxis that is dedicated to teaching reading. So can I get an amen, a high five? Like, this is huge that our colleges have gotten on board with that too. So they're going to come out having to pass that assessment. All right. So let's look at this. This is unnerving. It should be unnerving. Okay. Why is what you're seeing? Why am I going to push for you that we should be uncomfortable with these third grade reading results? Put it in your chat. What bothers you about this? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not okay. And I do want to caution always to say, absolutely, the assessment has changed a little bit. So you can't really compare apples to apples here. We do know the assessment changes, but overall, guys, we are staying stagnant in our proficiency across Kentucky, and we cannot be okay with that. That should bother everybody in this room. I know that it does, but it's got to bother our teachers as well, our communities as well, because we look at the significance of third grade reading. Just sit with that for a second. When I think about how to sell the why is early literacy important, these bullets come to mind. These are the conversations I would have with community members. Right? We know that by the end of third grade, they've got to be reading on grade level. Doesn't mean they're not going to be successful, right? Doesn't mean we can't still make gains with kids. What it does mean is their trek is going to be tougher, right, throughout school. All right, click for me, Tara. I'm sorry that you've had to become my Vanna. We can look at data like that, but if you're trying to create an urgency in your school or community, I'm going to show you a different way to look at it. So according to NAEP data, that's our national data, not just KSA, only 31% of our fourth graders are proficient or above. Different grade level, national statistics, the percentage goes down, not up. I think you click one more time. Right? So this also creates urgency. Like if we look at our own kids in our own schools and start blacking out and say, nope, they're not going to be proficient. Nope, they're not going to be proficient. That should create an urgency to do something different. And we've got to think outside of our little hole, our little school. Like maybe your school is doing well, but let's look at the whole as far as longitudinal data, K through 12. How do they do once they leave us? All right, click. Okay, that was overall data, but let's break it down by demographics. If you were in Christie's, you saw this as well. And I'm saying any of you all will have access to this presentation, use it. Use it with your teachers, use it with your site-based councils. Because we're looking at 22 versus 23 grade 3 reading scores by student demographics. When you first look at that, and if I were to say to teachers, what do you see? The green represents, hey, we're getting a little better here. Like 74% below proficiency is better than 75%. We don't have time to only make 1% change every year. Would you agree with me on that? Like we've got to do something different than what we've done before. So when teachers come to you and say, well, why are we having to adopt something different? Why is this law been passed? Because if we continue doing what we've always done, we're going to get the same results, right? Sorry, I get real passionate about this. So I want us to look at the law not as compliance driven, but as this is equity. This is about equity for all of our students across Kentucky. All right, click for me. So let's get into the meat of it. We've got 18 minutes. So why H2 hours? So this is where you need your note taking too. When you think about how you communicated this to either your principals, if you're a district personnel, or to your teachers, I need you to think to yourself, how have I communicated to my staff the why behind H2 hours? Because if we just say the law is requiring it, there will be no buy-in in our schools. Right? We can't just say we've got to choose, we got to choose, we got to do this because we're being told. You have to understand why. And we've got to build that with our staff as well. So I'm going to model this. You can change it as needed. But I started with my site-based council 3 years ago when I was a high school principal about adopting an H2IR in a different content area. But I started with them with looking at the opportunity myth, that article that really talks about what we place in front of our students absolutely matters, just like the teacher in the room does. All right, click for me. So the teacher matters, resources matter. All right, again. So when you look at the state of Kentucky, we've created a visual that talks about strengthening tier 1. So the first piece that I always say, and I got this from the fabulous Ashley Hill, we can't intervene our way out of a tier 1 problem. So let's sit with that one more time. We cannot intervene our way out of a tier 1 problem. So if we're sitting at data in the state of Kentucky that says only 45 or 47% are proficient, that's a tier 1 instructional issue, peeps. That is not a tier 2 or tier 3. So when we look at that, the why behind H2IRs is clear because universally in front of all our students needs to be a high quality instructional resource. But before that even comes a common instructional vision. Like, what do we need for our students? What's our vision? So let's look at that. How can I get my teachers to understand that an HQIR is not their enemy. Because you can raise your hand, you can be my thumbs up. Please use the chat as we go. It's up on my screen because I'm thankful for Tara being my Vanna. But guys, that's probably our number one barrier is going to be teachers who feel like we're taking their creativity and their autonomy away by asking them to teach from a high quality instructional resource. So we need to explain the why behind that too, what it is. So if we look at, I want my teachers to have more time in the art of teaching and how to deliver that content than finding it. So in reality, where do our teachers go to look for resources? I put myself in this bucket. I started teaching in 2000. I'm sad to say the internet probably wasn't even that. I don't even think there was Pinterest in 2000. But 96% of our teachers are using Google to find their lessons. Pinterest, I didn't even put the favorite up there, which is what? Teachers pay teachers, Danielle. Absolutely. And we see something bright and shiny and it looks fun for our kids, but a teacher who doesn't understand, our young teachers maybe, or teachers who are emergency certified, don't understand how to take it through the rigor of, does it meet the rigor of our standard? Is it aligned to Kentucky academic standards? So for too long, we have found correlated activities and not congruent activities to our standards. So the first piece of HQIR is it gives you back 7 to 12 hours per week that your teachers are spending looking for resources. That isn't even laying it out. It's looking for resources. So instead of using mine, I think I'd send out to my teachers, how long are you spending looking for resources? Use that to your advantage when then trying to tell them why an HQIR would be great. I'm saving you time. If we think about how many years and times we spent trying to align things. All right, click for me. I'm trying to stay on my time here. Okay, the next piece is, when I talked about the rigor of the standard, those of us who've been in education more than 5 years, we understand DOK, right? Depth of knowledge. So within that, when we were looking at some of those other resources, I won't call them out, right? But that's what we were finding is most content in those activities were DOK 1 or 2. Just basic knowledge and application. All right, you can click here. There'll be some. So most of them were here. And then at DOK level 3 or 4, all right, 94%. So none of the main activities and 94% of those resources were DOK level 4. Nearly half for DOK level 3. Well, if we look at what's required with thinking, 21st century schools, 21st century skills, what's required of our kids when they leave high school, it's not 1 and 2, it's 3 and 4, Pete's. Look at your profile of a graduate, connect that to the why behind an HQIR. All right, so we know that students have inconsistent access to content. That's an equity issue. And I'm not playing a blame game. I'm just saying, how can I give all kids the same opportunity when they're sitting in? I had 3 biology teachers, 4 or 6 English teachers, etc. So this data talks about students. So in a single school year, the average student spends 581 of 720 available hours on assignments that are not high quality. So remember what high quality means. It's to the rigor of the standard and it's grade level appropriate. What I've also haven't put on here is that you're going to find in the opportunity myth. So if you haven't read it, go to it now. It's being updated this year. But students are spending that amount of time and they're also making good grades. But it's not at the rigor of the standard. So I also talk about it being particularly significant for students of color and students living in poverty. They aren't having that same access. All right. So when we talk about why, I just want you to take a moment and on your paper where you put that why, I want you to think of, or at least write this word, How am I communicating the why of an HQR? How do I create an urgency with my staff about why we need to do things differently? And you could code two different directions. You could do them both. I showed you the teacher side. It makes your job easier. But then I also showed you the student side as well. Okay, so then an HQR, what is required and then who's at the table? I want you to be thinking about that. And we're going to use the chat here in just a second again. So if you'll click for me, please. This involves, Tara, I'm a clicker, so it's going to have some highlights in here, okay? So go ahead and just kind of click through, okay, and just pause for a second. Guys, by July 1, 2024, each superintendent shall, it used to say may, shall means we have to, we don't have a choice, adopt a common comprehensive reading program that's determined to be reliable, valid, and aligned. What is the State Department saying that is? A green rated resource through EdReports. Okay. So just sit with that for just a second. I am hoping that no one in this room is unaware of that requirement. Some districts are doing it. It's up to the district, the process they utilize, right? It's up to your district. At the end of the day, it is the superintendent's decision, but most superintendents have a committee, right? So just know this, by July 2021, and it's K through 3, that is required. And again, don't let the negative Nelly in your brain or anyone else come out. It's just compliance. Can't believe they're making us do it. No, it's an opportunity for us to get better. This law provides an opportunity for us to get better. All right, click through. So I'm going to talk about, go back one slide, sorry. The common piece right there, a common comprehensive program, that is meant for like the elementaries choose the same common resource. But in really large districts, you have certain elementaries that feed this middle, certain elementaries that feed that middle. So that's why it says, okay, those can choose a common. These over here that feed a different middle can choose a common. But guys, we understand the reasoning behind that, right? It's called transiency. Kids are going to transfer from school to school. We don't want them to have a million different HQIRs that they're being exposed to. All right, go ahead. Sorry, had to say that. Okay, so again, looking at that strengthening tier 1 instruction, access to strong local curriculum and HQIR. All right, we're going to start with that vision. So click. This is what I was talking about as far as common, same subset, the comprehensive reading program. This is the importance of letters training. I'm running out of time. This is the importance of letters training because many of our people don't understand the importance of all 5 key areas. And there's a lot of misinformation and miscommunication going out there, leaders, about an HQIR. It's got to be both. Structured literacy is not just foundational skills, right? It is both. So when you're looking for your HQIRs, we need to take it through a rigorous process looking at both foundational and comprehension. So when I say who is at the table when looking at HQIRs, I hope it's teachers and leaders who have gone through letters training. I hope it's people who know those 5 components and know how to take it through a rigorous process. Click for me. I got to go fast. All right, on our website, we talk about what is the definition of an HQIR. Ashley and Christy talked about that in an earlier session. So it talks about comprehensive, like what we say is an HQIR. So go back to their session if you want a little bit more about that. Click. Maybe. Okay, I would take a picture of this slide, but it'll be available so you know this slide. Now, this right here, when you talk about the who, this will be a learning session for teachers who have not had the science of reading experience, professional experience, because they may not have the knowledge to understand what this is looking at. But when we look at HQIR materials, it's got to be evidence-based. We've got to have evidence-based, and we do have to focus on decoding. But decoding isn't the only piece of an HQIR, right? So we're not going just back to decoding. All right, click. When you're looking for your HQIRs, we're looking for a clear scope and sequence. Well, leaders right now thinking about who's at your table, do you have literacy people at your table that know what the scope and sequence is supposed to be? If not, they need to be at the table with me. I was a high school teacher who became an elementary principal. I needed people beside me that knew what we were looking for until I knew, right? And then what is the time? Is the HQIR we're looking at, does it give us appropriate time allotted for direct instruction, not just small groups? So when you're looking at your HQIRs. So I've thrown up a lot of information really fast, enough just to start a conversation, enough for you to please reach out to your director in your area for more help and guidance. But the how, clicking to the how is KDE supporting us? I think sometimes we're working so hard over here, and I've been on both sides of it, that we don't even see what KDE is putting out. So this next slide I'm going to share with you. And then, Terry, you're going to have to do double duty of putting it in the chat after I talk about them. But guys, the model curriculum framework is where I would tell you to start if you haven't. Of course, we're running out of time, right? But the model curriculum framework, the curriculum development process is a piece of that. It's just one piece of model curriculum framework. So that's where I would start. If you've never seen that document, I need you to get on and go through that document, especially the curriculum development process at section 1. Then also KDE's put together for you a reading and writing instructional resources consumer guide. Consumer guide, meaning if we're looking at all these, what questions do we need to ask the publisher? What do we need to do? Like all of that's in your consumer guide ready for you to utilize with your staff. And then the last thing I'll tell you, one of the main things I would go to is KentuckyStandards.org. Phenomenal website. But within that, guys, if you'll go to standards resources, and then our professional learning modules where Misty Higgins and Fox DeMoisey take you through it. So instead of you sitting in front of and having to create presentations, they've already taken you through the process, the curriculum development process, and then choosing HQIR with pre-recorded sessions for you to utilize. So that would be also where I would start. All right. And then there's leadership there as well. Within those documents, everything is hyperlinked. I know I've got 2 minutes, Chrissy. Everything is hyperlinked. So one of the hyperlinks is it green on Ed Reports? And you just click it and it takes you right to Ed Reports. And within Ed Reports, then you click, you choose ELA, then core comprehensive, because we want a comprehensive program. Some of you all have adopted an HQIR that is just knowledge building maybe, and you're looking for foundational. So you can adjust what you're searching for there, but I would encourage you to look comprehensive first, and then you can dial it down by grade level, etc. So step 1. If you don't know what process your district's going through, I would ask some questions today, not yesterday, because it impacts the teachers in your building. It impacts your elementary school. And then if you haven't started talking about the why is more important than the what right now with teachers. They need to know why we're moving toward an HQIR. I've given you contact information. You have my information as well. And then Tara is going to put in a feedback form for you guys. And more than anything from this feedback form, I need to know how we can better support you too, and what the needs are across the state with leaders in regard to HQIR. And then it also asks you, hey, do you want your director to get in contact with you? Yes. Okay. Give us your email, phone number, This is our whole job, is to support early literacy in schools across Kentucky. So please use the free resource that you got through us right now. And so we're there to support you, to answer questions, to problem solve, to help you plan things. But model curriculum framework is where I would start when looking for your HQLR. Right on time.
That's impressive. I thought I was going to have to dong her.
I know.
Yeah,
And
no,
I
you
went
did
a little
great.
quicker through those last, but I think that's big, guys. And I know some people are leaving and we'll go to a different session, but I just think too much in education, we skip the why with teachers.
Yes.
Just like teachers sometimes skip the why with kids. And everybody wants to know, how will it impact me? How is it going to make me better? And that's our job as leaders, to support, but also create that passion of, this will make us better and this is why.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, you'll have more kids reading. So, yeah.
And then one thing we're pushing, guys, is that we're really pushing people to adopt HQRs that are knowledge building. And that's the next session, is with Amelia. She's going to be talking about, what does that mean, a knowledge building HQR? Because that's been foreign to a lot of us in Kentucky. That's something new. So Amelia's going to dig into that next. Amanda, you asked about, is there a list? There are, I think, a list of 3 that KDE supports and highlights on their website. But again, it's not a list as far as, it just has to be green rated. We try to leave that up. So you just, those are your choices. It's got to be green rated.
Thank you all for joining us today. And you've got
in the chat, I included the blurb from our early literacy website that was shared with superintendents with a little bit more of that direction for you. Thank you. Sorry.
Oh, that's fine. Good. Thank you.